Kristen, we live in a society,
Do we, Mac?
yes, where honor is a distant memory. Isn't that right, Batman? Wrong Joker movie. But anyway, welcome back to another episode of the M&K Productions Podcast. I'm your host, Mac, joined here as usual by my host with the most and my close confidant, Kristen, aka Miss Flamingo. She's back at it. How you doing today, Kristen?
I'm doing well. How you doing, bud? Sending you a virtual hug as we
Aw.
record the latest episode. But I'm excited today because we're talking about one of my favorite films from 2019 today.
Literally the last big film of 2019 before
Lockdown.
the great lockdown of 2020. And Jesus Christ, what has really kind of like shaped me with Joker is the fact that like that came out my second year of college, and it was just like, wow, you wouldn't even know you were at the lockdown and everything. But yeah, what a way to kick off that era. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about in celebration of the new Joker movie coming out, Dancer 2, because I'm not going to pronounce that other name like that. Hell no.
Everybody's calling it Joker 2.
Yeah, we're not going to do Felix D whatever. We're gonna be talking about going back to 2019. We're gonna be talking about the first Joker movie. And we've never talked about the Joker movie because this podcast was still a radio show and we really didn't get around to it. And now we're doing it almost 5 years later. And yeah,
I wasn't even a part of it. This was just
I didn't even know you. You were just someone stalking my
No.
Instagram. You weren't stalking. You were just on my
I was
stories.
not stalking on
You were on my stories, I will say.
I was in the social room because by then I had joined Instagram and was starting to put out like a feeler of my content. It's not like the way it is now. Well, I still do written reviews and do all sorts of stuff, but now I've evolved.
Yes, it is. It's crazy because I think I met you at least a year after Joker came out, and we never talked
A
about
couple
it.
months
Like
into the pandemic, because it was
yeah.
definitely like May of 2020 when I was like, you're like, hey,
You want to come on the
podcast? And I was like, I've never done a podcast before, so absolutely.
But yeah, we're gonna be talking about Joker, and we're excited to do it, and we're also gonna be going over some other just little things in the film industry.
Movie news.
Yeah,
it's a typical episode.
Oh yeah, it's a typical episode. We're back at it. We were a little rusty. We finally talked about Deadpool Wolverine with our good friend Dom last week, and we're ready to go. So I think out of everything, I think we should probably get into the news. Should we?
Yes. Are you ready?
Yes, let's get right into the news.
This is CNN, a network of Turner Broadcasting System.
Okay, so starting off with some very somber news. The great James Earl Jones has passed away at the age of 93. He is well known for Field of Dreams and voicing Mufasa, The Sandlot, Conan the Barbarian, but I guess his main claim to fame was Darth Vader, and he had just had a very, very lengthy, prolific career. He passed away yesterday, September 9th, or actually technically 2 days ago when we record this, September 9th. And it's sad, a lot of tributes came out. Mark Hamill posted on Twitter saying, rest in peace, Dad. And with the Star Wars cast, the only people left are Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford. And it's just sad. Kristen, what was your first experience with James Earl Jones?
I think like a lot of people my age, especially like who were like 90s kids, like early 90s babies, they obviously like watched The Lion King.
It's true. Yes, I love
So I think, and that has to be like one of the greatest animated films of all time. And even as an adult, I look back at it and I was like, maybe I wasn't the biggest fan of it as a kid, but looking at it now, it's absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And just him alone, he was so good in it. I just was very, very shocked about his passing, because you don't think about, some of the actors you grew up watching, and you don't think about them passing away,
No.
It's sad because I didn't realize like how many people we lost this year, like famous, actors and those people who are just legends, So what was your first experience with James Earl Jones?
Darth Vader. Actually, no, it was Mufasa, because Lion King, I've said multiple times, Lion King is my all-time favorite Disney movie, and his voice as Mufasa was very, very just he was a stage actor, of course. And
Yes.
actually fun. One thing about him too is that he actually had a stutter since childhood, and that poetry and acting helped him overcome it. And you wouldn't even be able to tell that he had a stutter because he has such a regal presence with his film. And
Uh-huh.
I always think one of the things I watched later on is actually he was in the play version of um Defenses. He played Denzel Washington's character, the dad,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a video of it on YouTube of him just acting. He's just an incredible actor, and it just he one of the things I think I like the most because we use for the podcast is our news transition. It's like this is CNN, that he did that voice, like he did it
Yeah.
for years, and I think that he's going to be severely missed. And it is crazy because we're getting the Mufasa prequel this year, and I'm assuming it's definitely going to be dedicated to his memory because he did come back.
Exactly.
He came back to do, and I don't like the 2019 Mufasa Lion King movie, but
Nobody
you know
does.
he
Nobody does.
he came back to voice Mufasa, and I think that was great of that. And I'm just we had him. You just appreciate the work, and God rest his soul. Definitely a great actor. And one thing I've been quoting since the day he passed away, he's like, "You're a part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take it away." But rest in peace, man. You'll be severely missed. And did you ever see the Big Bang Theory episode with him?
Yes.
That funny joke of like, this is Carrie Fisher's house. We ding down this street. She's like, it's not funny, James. It's like, why am I still laughing?
Yes, I remember that one. I think a lot of the times when they did like a lot of like the Star Wars references or even the Star Trek references, like a lot of like film like nerds freaked out because it's like, oh my God, they got James Earl Jones to do, or like, what's his face? The guy from the old Star Trek stuff. Like even any of that stuff, like when they
Uh-huh.
show their face, it's like, oh my God, they appeared as themselves in a sitcom episode, And it's like self-aware, and it's like a joke of itself. So, but I want to mention too, Coming to America is absolutely one of my favorite late 80s films. I think that movie is hilarious, and I just
Mhm.
like love seeing him in that little bit. He's great. And to bring up the stutter too, I would have never known that. So that's my first time learning about that. But he's great in that. I I didn't realize this because I was going through his film list. He worked to Vanessa Hudgens in Gimme Shelter,
Yep.
which I'm aware of the film, but completely forgot about that he was in it. But he's done so much that it's wild to see that a great talent like him is gone, But
Yeah,
rest in peace to a legend.
you'll be greatly missed. But Kristen, what other news do you got to report?
Okay, moving on to a little bit of something happier, because if you missed this film in theaters, you now can watch it on Prime Video. I mean, you still could rent it, but it's coming to the streaming service now. Uh, Challengers. Did you get to
Yeah.
see that movie yet?
No, that didn't really interest me.
It's the film directed by Luca Guadagnino and stars Zendaya, Mike Face, and Josh O'Connor. And it's expected to hit Prime Video in 8 days. So basically, that is September 19th. So if you missed it in theaters, you can watch it there. But this film follows Tashi, a former tennis prodigy turned coach, transformed her husband into a champion. But to overcome a recent losing streak and redeem himself, he'll need to face off against his former best friend and Tashi's ex-boyfriend. And this movie was crazy. It had a great soundtrack. I think one of my favorite Luca Guadagnino films I've seen. And I think it was the first Luca film. No, it wasn't the first Luca film. I saw Bones and I in theaters. But it was probably my favorite watch of one that he had done. But
Mhm.
this is also coming off on the heels of him premiering his film at, I think it was Venice, his film Queer that stars Daniel Craig and Drew Starsky
Mhm.
from OBX, because that is potentially getting some Oscar bait recognition, especially for Daniel Craig. So if you're on the Luca Guadagnino train, you can watch it starting on September 19th. If you missed it, in theaters.
Marketing campaign for Challengers. That trailer came out like a year ago, and it was like it had that scene of Zendaya in the hotel room, and she had like a devious ass smile, and it was like, oh
Yeah,
my! I was
it
like,
was like a
Jesus,
it was a meme,
there was a
and
meme. They're like, poor Tom Holland, check on him.
then people were poking fun of the churro scene that's in the film. I mean, I've said this in my review. I never seen two grown men eat a churro so aggressively and make it so like explicit as possible, kind of in a way. It's definitely a film I don't think my husband or like a lot of people I could see like them getting into, but it was a popular watch because it made $94.2 million at the box office.
I will say it
And
was a sleeper hit of the. Did it come out during the summer?
no, it came out in the last week in April.
It was kind of like a sleeper hit of the year because there were people that like I did like people were like they did like it, and like the thing is
It
it's
was
just
really good.
I didn't hear a lot about it besides the initial trailer because if I'm not mistaken, doesn't this get delayed
Yeah,
a few
because
times?
of it was delayed because of the strike.
Okay, because
So,
I remember the trailer when that meme was Zendaya that came out like in 2023, and they kept playing that
right.
same one for a year, and I'm like, when is this movie coming out? And then I see that it's just crazy because I think the reason why it didn't last long, like kind of like in that box office sphere, is because the Fall Guy was literally right after that, and that's what I was really paying attention to.
Yeah. And that, and then I think this film is also going to get overlooked at the Oscars this year because this was talked about. Because I did see the film for Dom's podcast, Talking TV. So shout out that if you want to check out that episode. Um, we talked about it, and there could be a chance where it misses, Zendaya getting a nom or any of the other actors getting a nomination this year for that film. But I feel like it has a chance of getting a nomination for its scoring because it's by the legends, Octavius Ross and Trent Reznor. So, and they, of course, killed it on that soundtrack. So, really, very
It'll
great.
probably get something like something like this. I want to say it screams Oscar film or like award film, but there was some very work on it, and this will be on a lot of people's top 10 lists of the year. So I'll probably give it a watch when it's on streaming because I have a lot to catch up on, and it is funny. I'm looking at the director's filmography. What a interesting career. He did Call Me by Your Name,
Well,
uh,
Lucas that had some interesting films. That's fair to
and
say, but I am gonna check out
especially
Clear, the
especially
one that he just directed.
Does He Call Me by Your Name had a peach scene, and then like you have a very interesting
There's
style.
peaches, there's churros, there's a lot
I'm
of
like
stuff going
I'm
on with
starting to see something
food.
here. But I have one more news story.
Yeah, what's your last piece of
And
news?
this was a breaking news this year because we're on the same track as Star Wars, which
Might
is
as well
crazy to
talk
me
about it since we
because
mentioned James Earl Jones.
yes, because Disney is being sued over Peter Cushing's likeness being used in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Do you remember that?
A little bit, but let's give me a refresh and the audience a refresh.
So when Rogue One came out, which is the best Disney Star Wars movie, bite me. When Rogue One came out, there's a lot of controversy because this is a prequel. This takes place between episode 3 and 4. So it follows how they got the Death Star plans from the Empire. And one of the characters, of course, to tell the story is Grand Moff Tarkin, played by the late Peter Cushing. Um, However, Peter Cushing passed away in 1994. So they really haven't used his character like since the original movies, but they use the aging and CGI stand-ins to they use Guy Henry as a stand-in, and they CGI his face to bring Cushing back in Rogue One. And it didn't look terrible, but
Mhm.
and it was weird because the weekend Rogue One came out, Carrie Fisher passed away, and they used the same thing with her for the digitally de-age her back to A New Hope. But the London-based film company Ty Burn Film Productions is taking Disney to court over the uses of his stand-in, and
Mhm.
this could open the realm for VFX companies to not use deceased actors' likenesses on films like this because there's always some what we said um like the whole Christopher Reeve thing back in the
Right.
Flash movie. And what do you think about that? Do you think that, if I remember correctly, I think the family of Peter Cushing, they said they were okay with it and they got permission. But do you think that they should use VFX to bring actors back who've dead, or you think they just said no?
It's kind of like a thing that we're facing a lot of the stuff with AI now. It's more of the person of itself. I mean, of course, we weren't expecting like somebody like Peter Cushing or even Paul Walker, someone like him to pass away so soon, especially Paul Walker, and not getting the rights, to say they okay, their own personal selves to say, okay, you can use my likeness, you can use myself, and, films years to come from now, it's like we're in this weird part where that's being still questioned and ethical. I think to me, I think if maybe a film, if it's like in the mix of like production and the actor suddenly passes away, then maybe, but then after that, no. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying?
I think so. I think it's mostly like you think that they should at least get permission and then see if they
Mhm.
want to use it. Because it's like, get the permission
Yeah.
first and then keep it in your back pocket if you want to use it. I don't think, if
I
it
don't
doesn't make sense narratively, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. I
But
mean, if
like,
there's a way to cut out the character, then if the actor passes away, then do it,
or you
but
can
or
mention it, like,
stop the story or.
but with Rogue One, you kind of did need Grand Moff Tarkin because he is a very integral part to the first Star Wars movie about the
Mhm.
Death Star, and like I think that was very important to bring him, like, to do that. But I think there was a way maybe to do, because I think before it was just using archival footage a lot of the times for stuff like
Mhm.
that. But
Yeah.
now you got people getting standing in and just kind of doing the AI VFX effects. And this was like 2016. This was way before everything got, all.
This was like this is the precursor to everything that we're living in now.
Yeah.
So, uh, this is a good topic to talk about too, more in depth, I think. But for now, I think it should, if the family says like if they're uncomfortable with it,
Mhm.
then they have every right to be like, hey, like I think the family should have a right to see the footage first before it's like in the film, get the okay.
Mhm.
Like to be like, okay, this scene is good. We feel that this is comfortable, I think there should be a lot of lines drawn before, you know, it gets into legal territory. What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of already said it. It's just,
Yeah, true.
yeah. So
And
I
sorry,
don't know.
I could like dig more holes into this because this is like something we've kind of talked about in the past.
We talked about it during the Flash because they did the same thing with George Reeves and Christopher Reeves.
And this was something going on even now that when the actors are on strike, they were
Yeah.
going against for. And we talked about this with Brendan Bradley when he was on the show. We
Mhm.
touched on it, and that was another interesting conversation of itself. So it's like a big giant can of worms, the way I'm seeing this.
Yeah. Would that be an interesting topic? Just do like a discussion about VFX and everything. That could be a good little philosophical debate.
Definitely. Anyways, you ready for my last piece of news? This is
Yeah, go
kind of
ahead.
like, it's sad, but I understand because you remember when we had Kathy Bates on the show
Yes, yes,
a
I
couple
read the
years
news.
ago?
Yeah.
But the legendary actress, just ahead of her debut at Madlock, the reboot on CBS, she has announced that this is going to be her final work before her retirement. So Bates, who is 76 years old, told the New York Times in an interview published this Sunday that she was already in the retirement mood after an unnamed movie shoot went left and at the point brought her home alone in tears. She admitted the original Madlock series didn't dazzle her, but the reboot script, a new take with commentary on ageism, made her take a pause. The Oscar winner told the Times that the series has been a place where she can pour her talents into. Everything I prayed for and worked for, claws clawed my way up for. I am suddenly able to be asked to use all of it. She said, it's exhausting. So, Matlock consequently will be her farewell performance. This is my last dance, she told the outlet. So, she also, I want to bring up the fact that not that ageism is a thing, she also suffers from, I think it's called lymphedema. It's the disease that I think Wendy Williams has.
Uh-huh.
So I had to double check on that. But with that disease and then, aging, and it's all like, things building up to say I'm ready to hang up, you know, my hat. And she's done so much work as I'm sitting here. She's Academy Award winner, like we said. She's been in so many films, including like Richard Jewell. If you all haven't seen her in Home, go watch her in Home. That's the movie we got to interview her for. She was just in Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. She was also just in Summer Camp and A Family Affair with Nicole Kidman. She was also in a Big Bang Theory episode, going back to that. She had her own Netflix series called Disjointed. She was in the show Feud with Ryan Murphy. She starred along with Melissa McCarthy and The Boss. She was in Bad Santa. She's done so much work. It's insane. Like, I just adore her, and getting the chance to speak with her before she actually decides to be like, hey, I'm going to retire and just live my life.
Mhm.
It's rewarding that she's lived such a long career and had such a long career, and just seeing her talents, as she decides to be like, all right, I'm going to conclude this chapter in my life. And
I
also I
think
can't gotta mention Titanic too. So
I think it's more of like too of like, she's had such a very long, illustrious career, and I'm just like, like at a point it's like, I've done everything I can. I want to do the Matlock, and you just can right off the sunset because she's had such a prolific career. I think when you mentioned, hey, Kathy Bates, you've seen her, it'd either be like, oh my God, Misery or something like that, or
yeah,
even The Office. And I think she's had a great career, and I can't wait to see her Matlock. One of my favorite actresses growing up. I think she will be missed. But
Misery is definitely so iconic. And I just want to confirm she does have lymphedema as well. So, but that didn't stop her, with her career. She's done so much. So Kathy Bates, we will honor you still. And I think we should probably even do an episode on her.
I
Like
mean,
what we did
hey,
our
if that's
Jennifer Lawrence one,
something you want to do, go ahead.
Well, I gotta have my partner have a say. Do you want to do a Kathy Bates episode? Question mark? Or I'll ask the audience too. Y'all, do you want to see a Kathy Bates episode? Let us know in the comments. Alrighties. Mac, are you ready to talk about the film?
Yeah, let's talk about the Joker and talk about why we're in a society.
This is
Everybody's telling me that my stand-up's ready for the big clubs.
Joker, rated R.
All right, so today's topic, in celebration of the second Joker movie coming out in a few weeks, we're going to be going over the first Joker movie back in 2019, directed by Todd Phillips, starring Joaquin Phoenix. And I call this a Joker movie, as I would call Prometheus an Alien movie, because this is loosely a Joker movie, but it has inspirations that make it Joker, I guess. Yeah, let's go with that. Yes, this came out 2018. I had a lot of controversy because people thought it's going to lead to violent uprisings and everything like that. But no, it became very successful, and up until Deadpool Wolverine, it was the highest grossing rated R movie of all time. But now it is the second was of Deadpool, but it got a lot of rewards. It won Best Actor, Best Original Score, and yeah, this is a very monumental movie. And would Kristen, I'll ask you this first: when they announced that Joker's going to be filmed and what they were going for, what was your first reaction to it?
To be honest, I was just going in thinking like, oh, this is just like a Joker film. This is going to be like based on the comic or something. Like I kind of tried to know as little as possible because I wanted to be surprised. I just knew based on the trailers that I saw in discussions that I saw, like, not too many discussions, but like the little glimpses I saw, like people reacting to it on the internet, I was like, okay, I'm really sold on this. I'm excited. And I loved it. And it became one of my favorite films of 2019. And I love the fact it's such a different take, that it's still Joker, but it brings a discussion on different things, you know? Because it doesn't lose fact, this film, does follow Joker in a different way, in a different light. It just brings a lot to the table of a film that's a character study.
I do agree with that because there is a lot of inspiration. Like, of course, one of the big inspirations, Todd Phillips and surprisingly Bradley Cooper is a producer of the film, if I'm not mistaken,
And
as well.
Scorsese too.
Yeah, so this is actually this is very inspired by Scorsese because Robert De Niro being a host, but they've said that their two inspirations from Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, where some of their inspirations going into this
Raging
movie.
Bull
And
too.
all that. And that it adapts some parts of Batman, but I think that's one of the main complaints that people have with this movie because they're like, well, it's technically not a Joker movie. It's a movie with a guy who is like the idea of the Joker. I'm like, well, I mean, I guess you're right. And I did remember a lot of criticisms back then of people like, well, this wasn't what I was expecting. And I was thinking like, what are you expecting? And I realized they probably were thinking this is going to be something like The Dark Knight or, Batman Begins, but this isn't really, it's more of a character study.
It's a piece. It's a character piece. It's an
Yeah.
actor's like piece where, like, if you wanted to explore the artwork of an actor, and if so, like, this is the kind of thing where, like, if somebody's going to audition for a film or a stage play or anything like that, or has to do a monologue, they're going to pull from something like this.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And it just looks at like people in general. It's not like it looks at different things, but this is just mostly on a person. And I want to quote something that, like, Todd Phillips says, because he says that he loves bad guys. The Joker is clearly a bad guy right from the get-go, and we see him build up to being that bad guy because he's such in a bad state,
Oh, I thought you had something.
No, I was
Oh,
waiting
yeah.
for you to continue.
Oh yeah, no. This is definitely like one of those movies where you wanna I guess you want to say root for the bad guy, but you're more curious to see like what has got him to that point of doing what he's doing. Because if you think about it, the Joker is a character himself in the comics, any other movie, we really don't know a lot about what makes him tick. And while I don't want to say that this is like the definitive Joker story, like yes, people like this isn't like Joker, this is just someone with the idea of Joker. I think it's still kind of a good way to just kind of show, hey, this is like what we want to tell the story about and make it topical because it does go into the whole thing of mental health and the care of mental health in America, and I think that makes it more relevant because Joker is Batman even says like you're kind of a damaged guy and I want to see if I can help you, but you're just a murderous psychopath and stuff like that.
It does look like that. And going back to what you're saying about it looks at why somebody looks at like the way it is. So I'm going to say something else because I was watching, my husband and I watched Joker Monday night, and we were watching this feature on the Blu-ray that was called Joker, Vision and Fury, a really great 20-minute like piece that the film has on its Blu-ray. And he says, he wanted to explore this because, like, why is he like that and what made him like that? That's ultimately what the goal of the movie is. It's not this gigantic statement on the world today, and there is stuff in it thematically, but it's really like what makes somebody that way. And part of that too is the mental health stuff that's explored in the film, especially when he loses the rights to, not gain access through, social work,
Well, I mean, it is one of the things too, especially like this is both a character piece and a period piece because this takes place in 1981. And
Yeah.
the thing is too with that is that, mental health is still kind of not, I wouldn't say it's not as frowned upon now because it is encouraged to be, be open and get help when you need it. But when you go back to like the 80s, that stuff really wasn't touched upon a lot. And one of the things is that Arthur has a disorder where he just has random laughing fits, and he goes to social service to get these meds, and they cut the funding of it, and they're like, "Hey, we can't do it." He's like, "You always ask me if I'm fine." I'm like, "Wow, that is actually kind of true because, back then they didn't really have mental health as a priority, as to say like, hey, they just say, oh, you're crazy and get away from me, stuff like that,
Hmm. And then what I wanted to say is, it looks at that, and then I wanted to say, excuse me, oh shoot, I lost my notes. Okay, there we go. I wanted to say it looks at like the state of abuse
hmm
and delusion. So, and mostly delusion, because um the film explores what one of the mental illnesses that Arthur has is delusion, where he sees Penny
Yep.
in those moments. And you don't, like, when I first saw this, I thought
You mean
she was with it, with him.
Sophie Penny's his mom?
You know.
You said you mean
Oh,
Sophie, like Zazie Bates' character, because Penny's his
yeah,
mom.
yeah,
Oh,
that's what I mean.
okay.
That's, sorry, I said the wrong thing. Sorry, I looked at the wrong character list for a second. Yeah, Sophie. And she's with him in some of the scenes where he goes out to the comedy club and he thinks that he invited her, but and she's in the audience, but she's not. Like,
hmm
it's sprinkled in that, like, at least the first time I watched this, like, oh, she was with him, but rewatching it for like a second and third time now, it's like, okay, now you see where this all points to, is seeing like he suffers from delusions, you know, in this. So, and the fact that he could be also Thomas Wayne's son,
Uh-huh.
and it's not true. It's his mom who put that idea in his head, that saying, oh, Thomas Wayne is your father, we had this affair, blah blah blah. But in reality of the story, uh she took him in, and that's what happened. And he wants to believe his mom, but it turns out to be not true, because we have the scene in the film where Arthur confronts Thomas, and then there's also the scene where he gets to meet up with Sophie in her apartment, and that's like freaky of itself, of its own. So I think the film does great jobs with that.
hmm
And then what do you think the film has to say about comedy?
Life is a comedy.
Uh,
That's
yeah.
just like that's kind of just like it has this nihilistic kind of view to it because a lot of the humor is very tongue in cheek and dark. I mean, there are some parts where I laugh at, especially the part when he got fired from his job. It's like, oh, I forgot to punch out. He just started like smashing the time clock. He's probably like, okay, that's kind of funny. Like, it has this great sort of comedy that works because the Joker is very dark comedic. He's comedically dark, and I think that sort of comedy works for this because he is a psychopath. He's a murdering psychopath. He takes enjoyment of it. I mean, I think it's more seen near the end when he fully becomes like the Joker or Arthur Fleck, and you know I think near the ending is where we see a lot of the comedies. Like, oh my god, especially when he goes on the Robert
That
De Niro's show.
I mean, I want to bring up the fact that also Todd Haynes calls Joker an egoless narcissist.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he said this in the little featurette I was watching. And with the comedy stuff, you can see where that is shown in a lot of the stuff when he does like the nightclub, and then when he goes on, and I think the last half of this film, like the last like third act, has to be the strongest in the film, and he goes on the tonight spoofy Tonight Show, whatever,
The
and
Murray show.
the Murray Show,
Murray.
yeah, and he goes on, and it's very much like, do you remember that movie Network?
No.
There's like the scene where I remember watching it in college, where it's like the one of the actors has this big monologue, and he goes off the rails. But Joker kind of does that too, where he reveals that he ended up killing 3 men on the subway that were, you know of course, like hurting him and harassing them, and then he ended up shooting them because he had the gun. And you know he goes off the rails, talking about comedy, talking about life, and he ends up shooting Robert De Niro on television. And it's a wild last act, and it touches on everything where the film needs to wrap up perfectly, you
Uh-huh.
know? And I really thought, like, looking at this now and as we're really discussing it, I think Todd Haynes, not Todd Haynes, excuse me, I'm thinking of Todd Haynes, I don't know why. Todd Phillips uh really does an excellent job pulling everything together. I think it's one of his greatest films he's
Mhm.
ever done. I mean, forget the Hangover films. I mean,
Well,
he was lucky, he was
that's
lucky
another.
enough to get like Todd, not Todd, he was able to get like Bradley Cooper, and he's
Yeah,
built his like recognition as a director, but
that's the thing too. Like, you got the guy who did the damn Hangover and like Starsky and Hutch and like all due date, and he did like the damn Joker, and like from 2016 all the way to now, he's been on a great run because he did War Dogs, which I think is a really
which
great
never
film.
gets talked about enough, I
No,
don't think. It was like the beginnings of like where he can take something, I think, take a dark piece of material and turn it into something that could be like a discussion piece.
and then he did, Joker, and then the second Joker. So he's starting to find his own, because even with the older films, I actually like Starsky and Hutch. I think that's actually very funny movie. My favorite line is when Ben Stiller was like, "Looks like you just punched your ticket, amigo," and Oils is like, "I'm sorry, you just tough talk a dead guy."
I
And
mean,
he also did Road Trip. Road Trip is an underrated 2000s comedy, in my opinion. I like
the
that.
only one wasn't really a fan of, like what he directed, was like Due Date. I don't think that movie's like really funny at
Oh no, that
all.
movie's annoying. That kind of just tried to take the popularity of The Hangover with Zach
Yeah,
Galifianakis, and it
it
just didn't
did.
work.
And the second Hangover is definitely the worst one in the trilogy of itself,
Yeah,
personally speaking, but
he also produced Project X, a movie I have an infamous history with.
I think that movie is also really bad.
I think it's dumb.
It's so stupid. I remember like watching this and just being like, why am I watching this? Like, I remember renting it from the library when I was like in high school and just being like, why did I rent this?
I know they're doing a sequel to that.
Oh God, nobody asked for that, but uh, sure, TikTok stars will be in it for sure.
Oh god, it'll be like the new House Party. But we can't mention Joker. Can we talk about the ending of how it's like holy shit?
Yeah, that's how I was saying.
so
It's like the last act of this film. I want to
so
say, chef's kiss.
so what's funny is that, me being the comic nerd that I am, since they said that this story was based on loosely based on The Dark Knight Returns, when I saw who Robert De Niro was playing and that this is a Joker film, I put two and two together because I watched the animated version of The Dark Knight Returns. Fun fact: Peter Weller voices Batman in that movie. He's awesome.
Mhm.
But there's a scene where he goes, Joker was in this comatose state, and Batman comes back. He's like, "Oh my god, Batman's back!" He's like, "I'm gonna come back with a bang." He goes on the Murray show, and then he poisons everyone in the crowd. And I'm like, okay, something's gonna happen with this one, but I'm gonna walk you through. So we saw this, I think, a week after it came out, or maybe the same weekend. It was me and my dad,
Okay.
and I knew, I thought to myself, like, he's not gonna shoot himself. I was like, in the back of my mind, I was like, he might shoot him, but I don't think that's gonna be the thing. And I like how the scene is, because the scene is very quotable, and I think it does have it does kind of like is the thesis of the movie about how, hey, us as a society, we really don't pay attention to the mentally ill people, and
Mhm.
what they can do. And he confessed, like, yeah, I killed these 3 Wall Street guys, and he goes like, he's like, you want to hear another joke, Murray? He's like, what do you do? What do you get when a society teaches you trans? I'll tell you what you get. You get what you fucking deserve. And then he just blasts him, and I'm like, whoa! I think I audibly went, holy shit! And my
Yeah.
dad's like, whoa, because it's one of those things of violence where it's like, it's sudden, and there's build up to it, but you don't know, like, it's like it goes from point A and then goes all the way to Z. Like,
Right.
and you're like, holy shit, and then you're like, oh, and he shoots him again, and then I like to probably say, and he get with to the camera, he's like, and remember, always smile. It just cuts the TV off. Like, okay, that's
Yeah.
funny. But that ending, I think, is probably the most iconic part of this movie. That
Yeah,
last
it
sequence.
is. And then I love the part where it's like, he's like taken away. He's in like the police cab, and he does the smile, with the blood. Like I felt this immense tingle throughout my body, and I was like, oh my God, this guy is off the rails. And you wanted, and it's funny because you wanted to root for him to succeed and get the mental health care that he deserves, and you want to root for him to get the help, but then knowing he goes down this obviously dark path, it just is like, oh my God, it's insane. And going into it now, I want to mention that, like, going into the Batman stuff too, since you talked about the Batman influences.
Yeah,
Obviously, Joaquin Phoenix is not dumping his body in acid. He just paints, his face,
it makes it more.
to
It took the Dark Knight method of kind of making it grounded in reality.
it is. And I think that's what's the best part of helping this film being what it is how grounded it really, really is. And if that bothers people, then
Tough titty.
yeah, honestly. And it really does a great job, like, making that as part as reality. And then they obviously changed the name of Joker. It's not, the
Well,
character's name is Arthur, but it's Jack.
the thing that makes Joker unique, like the comic, is that we really don't know his origin story, because all we know, he was a failed comedian, fell in acid, but we don't know too much about him. So I think kind of making this like this sort of this idea of the Joker, I think that worked better in the film's favor.
I didn't really have a problem with it. And I could see where, obviously, like, diehard Batman fans were like, "Oh, I'm gonna throw my torches at the screen because that's not what I wanted it." But I was like, there's no need to.
Mhm.
This is a different take. Yes, it has influences, but it's not a straight up Joker story. We weren't gonna get, obviously, the true origin story, but it's an origin story.
Yeah, this is just a character piece, origin story, and it's fine.
But I also want to talk before you wrap up on the film. Joaquin Phoenix, obviously, he is so talented in this film, and this is obviously one of the greatest performances he's ever done, and he was worthy of the Oscar, personally speaking.
Yeah,
Do
I
you
think
agree?
that this film was it when it came out, it was just so big. I just knew for a fact it was going to be Oscar. I think my thing was I didn't think he'd win it, but the fact that he didn't win it was like, okay, that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, it was worthy enough where he actually deserved it because he obviously, like, transforms into the role. He went on, like, a serious diet, where he was only eating like an apple a day,
Yeah,
and
he
he
lost a
got
lot
to
of
the
weight.
yeah, and it's like the weight, the extreme process of, like, what, Matthew McConaughey did for Dallas Buyers Club, and what Christian Bale did for The Machinist. It's like that method, like, I'm gonna really put myself through this, like, torture, and possibly hurt my body, but he obviously gained his muscle back. But looking back at the films he's done, I don't know if he'll ever achieve something that great, like that's, again.
Hmm.
I mean,
So
he's already talented enough, but
so my thing is, oh, go ahead, finish.
no, but I was like saying was like, Joaquin has done, like, Walk the Line.
Yep.
Obviously, he was in Gladiator. He's been in Parenthood. Um, he's been in a lot of stuff, But then like to come this far as an actor and then just be like, oh my gosh, he is stellar. You know?
I think one of the things that makes it so I guess we'll end it off with this. Seeing that the original plans of this was just a standalone film, because this is part of the DC's kind of like their Black universe. So it's not the DCEU, but this is like the Elseworlds type stories, is kind of their one off. And knowing that this was originally going to be standalone, but it made $1 billion, so a sequel is inevitable. Do you
Yeah.
feel like that? Because we'll come back to this. Do you feel like a sequel was necessary, seeing what happened at the end?
I think that if Todd has a story, obviously there was pressure from Warner Brothers to be like, hey, we got to make a sequel.
Mhm.
You know, if he has a story that he wanted to tell that could expand upon this, then tell it. Because again, this is like one of the films where the Joker was a great conversation piece because it did bring up controversy and, you know, bigger discussions. And if the film Joker 2, which we'll see soon, brings up a conversation and is worthy enough to talk about and, you know, can stand on its own, then great. I don't think it needed a sequel though.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the fact it's a musical. I mean, I like my musicals enough. I have certain ones that I love. There's obviously ones that I don't like, but you know, this is going to be a jukebox musical, and jukebox musicals are definitely like a hit or miss. And for everybody who doesn't know, a jukebox musical is like watching Rock of Ages.
Yep.
So, and obviously with this film to push it out in time, I don't think there was like enough time to write original music for it, but we'll see how it goes. I thought it was going to be like kind of on the same lines with what we saw in the first film,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like, and maybe sprinkle a song here and there. But I am curious because we are going to get Harley Quinn, you know, Lady Gaga's interpretation of it,
Yep.
and we'll see how that goes. I'm curious to see how the Joker is going to have a love interest. I think if that's the case, where maybe Joker does eventually find somebody that understands him,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and if it is this Harley Quinn, then okay, you know, like I'm really interested in it more to see how this plays out. Like I at this point, I really don't care what critics are saying until I see this film. Like if it's bad, okay. Like if it's mixed, okay. But I really want to see if the story was worthy enough to be told, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
I
What do
just
you
think
think? Did you think it's worthy enough for a sequel?
it's not worth. I'm going to say like more like if it's the question of worthy, it's just more of like, do we really need it? Because this
Yeah.
would feel like just kind of a, hey, we're going to do this one film and that's it. And I just think that, I mean, if there's story to tell, cool. But I kind of feel like if it goes haywire, and I'm not going to take these early reviews because that was kind of the same thing that happened in the first film. But if it goes haywire, I'm going to see this more of a studio issue,
Decision.
yeah, than it was. Because I will guarantee you, Todd Phillips was like, I ain't doing another one. And even Joaquin was like, I'm not doing another one unless they like, okay. So this is like, hey, we're going to do another one. It's like,
There was obviously studio pressure,
yeah.
and I think that's part of it. But do we need it though in the end? No, because Todd Haynes told the story already, but we'll see how it turns out. But I do want to say something as I'm looking back at it years now. This film
Mhm.
was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture. I thought it was worthy enough to win, you know, or not worthy enough to win, you know, be nominated for Best Picture. But seeing that Parasite won Best Picture,
Yeah,
Parasite
it
is the
was
absolute dominant
yeah.
film. And I look back at it now when I made my like top 20 list of like, you know, that I mean, like, thinking to myself, do I really want to overtop that with Joker? But I do agree with like the Academy back then when I was like, yeah, Parasite really was the
Yeah.
best film, you
If
know.
Joker came out a year later, then it would have had a chance, or a year before.
Maybe like like if it was in 2020, but like I don't think it would have saved the theater though, but I think it could have beaten Nomadland. Maybe.
I think it would have had a chance. I just think with Parasite was such a great film. It was just
It's Parasite alone is just so
yeah, it was uphill battle.
amazing.
Yeah.
But I do want to shout out because Joaquin Phoenix does have some upcoming films. He is going to be. We're gonna get that Joker film. We are gonna get whatchamacallit, a movie called Eddington, where he is working with Ari Aster again because we worked with him for Beau is Afraid.
Yep.
This film is going to star Pedro Pascal, Emma Stone, Austin Butler, Luke Grimes, Clifton Collins Jr., a really, really strong cast. But I'm excited. It feels like a very much Oscar baity film from what it sounds like. So can't wait to see what that brings next. Grading wise, what do you want to score or grade this film, Mac?
I don't remember when I gave it. I was still doing number grades, so I give it like an A.
I definitely give it an A. Maybe now give it as an A plus because I just adore that ending of what it is in the end. It's just so thrilling. It's so good. Yeah, definitely a worthy material from me because I didn't write a review of it at the time yet. So
I reviewed
yes,
it, and I kind of want to go back over it, to be fair.
definitely do it like as a throwback review. You should,
Yeah,
even though
but
we just reviewed it here.
maybe. But yeah, I think we're gonna wrap. Excuse me. We're gonna wrap it up here. What's the next episode? What are we doing next?
Guys, we got a secret surprise screening that we were sent to us. So
Yes.
that's going to be the next episode, a normal episode with just Mac and I talking news and doing our secret screening episode. And then we're going to do we got some other stuff in the works, but the big project is our first live stream.
Yes, we're gonna be live streaming with a couple friends, maybe. We're gonna be going over a live reactions. It'll be a live episode, and we're gonna be going over some news and talking about the new Joker film.
Yes, it'll be something that we're excited about. That episode is going to air uh in October 13th. So mark your calendars if you want to see our first live show. How exciting that is that? How exciting that is. And then we also are going to review at some point in honor of the second Gladiator coming out. We're going to look back at Gladiator.
Yes.
So that's what we got in the works, but more to come. But Mac, where can the good people follow us?
So you can follow us on YouTube. Just channel where you're posting in it. You find us on our Spotify, M&K Productions Podcast, and our YouTube. Kristen has a YouTube channel now, so under Miss Flamingo.
Yes.
She just posted a new interview, so go check her out. Link in the description. You can also find us on Instagram at M&K Productions Podcast, and you can follow us on Spotify, Anchor, iTunes, wherever you kids listen to your podcast now. We're everywhere.
Where the kids listen.
Yeah, whatever you guys, your tactics and your whatever. But until next time, I've been Mac, and this has been Kristen, and you've been listening to another episode of the M&K Productions Podcast. Peace.
Bye.